Welcome to the Resilience Room, where leadership meets life and every transition becomes an opportunity. Your host is Orville Brissett, pastor, military vet, board member, and your favorite leadership coach with a sense of humor. Here, we talk real strategies for real leaders navigating change in work, in life, in love, and everything in between. Because when things get complex, we bring clarity. When life shifts, we shift stronger. So grab a seat, take a breath, and let's build legacy, one resilient move at a time. This is the Resilience Room, and this is Orville.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is so great to be with you again another Tuesday afternoon. Welcome to the Resilience Room podcast. My name is Orville Brissett. This is the place where strength is built, leaders rise, and breakthrough begins. I've been away for a couple of weeks. I've had some wonderful things happening, opportunities being given, so it was tough to do both and wanted to stay live for a couple of weeks. So I just decided to wait and come back now. Glad to be back, ready to dig into what we have today. While you're coming on, why don't you do me a favor? You like, subscribe, and share to all the platforms that are listed so that we can keep up, so that we can comment, so that we can engage with you. Listen, I want to jump into the subject of resilience, but I want to dig into something very focused, very specific. And really, this was the result of something that happened this weekend. As you all know, I am also a pastor, and this week on Sabbath, we dealt with the subject of the sermon in the middle. And it was really taken from Romans 5, verse 8. God demonstrates his love to us in that while we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. And basically, we're talking about how God meets us in the middle of crisis with his ever extending love. And I began to think about that from a corporate leadership standpoint afterwards, yesterday and Sunday. I just began to think about it from a leadership and discover that for many leaders, when crisis hits and they're right in the middle of it, I'm talking knee deep, waist deep, a lot of leaders don't know how to navigate that. They don't know how to flex and how to adjust. And so this afternoon, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how leaders utilize resilience in the middle of crisis. And I want to start by saying this to you. Crisis doesn't build character, it reveals it. That's the quote that was attributed to James Lance Allen, but it's especially true for leaders. When everything is on fire, resources are drying up, the team is in disarray, the path forward is unclear, it's resilience that separates managers from adaptive leaders. For example, during the early days of COVID-19, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, she stood out, not because she had all the answers, but because she communicated clearly, admitted uncertainty, and acted decisively. That's really what resilience is all about, not pretending to have control, but staying anchored when things are swirling around you. Resilience isn't about brute strength or denying emotion. It's about absorbing pressure, adjusting, and still moving forward with clarity. So what does resilience look like in action? How does a leader utilize resilience when they're in the middle of crisis? Well, there are four key components that every resilient leader needs in crisis. The first one is emotional agility. That's the ability to feel fear, grief, frustration, and still choose your response thoughtfully and carefully. I got a little thing here from Harvard psychologist, little quote from a Harvard psychologist named Susan David, who calls emotional agility the ability to be with your thoughts and emotions in a mindful, productive way. So get this. Leaders who model this don't suppress stress. They navigate it openly and maturely. Let's take Howard Schultz at Starbucks. When the company faced massive layoffs and closures in 2008, he returned as CEO and began holding open forums with his employees. He acknowledged the pain, he didn't sugarcoat it, but he also painted a path forward. Along with emotional agility in a crisis, a leader also needs cognitive reframing. You see, resilient leaders reframe challenges not as threats, but as tests of innovation and character. This is something that I have had to do regularly in my leadership position, whether it was as a leading petty officer in the military, whether it was pastor of a church, chairing some type of board, to be able to adapt when things are moving in ways you didn't expect. It happened just all of a sudden. It's the ability to reframe the challenges, not necessarily as a threat, but an opportunity to be innovative, creative. When Satya Nadella took over as CEO of Microsoft, the company was stagnating. He framed its identity from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all culture. Oh man, don't miss that. From a know-it-all to a learn-it-all culture. That reframing helped Microsoft make one of the most significant corporate turnarounds in recent history. In crisis, you interpret what's happening. How you interpret what's happening, can be more important than the event itself. You can't help some of the things that happen to you, but you can help how you respond to all the things that are happening to you. That doesn't matter what demographic, whatever context it's in, whether it's the classroom, the boardroom, the operating room, it does not matter. Whatever happens to you is one thing. How you respond to it is totally different. So a leader in crisis needs emotional agility, cognitive reframing, but also connection and communication. You do know, if you don't, you're going to learn today, that isolation amplifies fear. Connection dissipates it. When you're a resilient leader, you stay visible, you check in. Resilient leaders listen, and crucially, they communicate often, even when there's little to say. I learned that along the journey, that the more you share, the easier it is to work through the problems as a team. During the Fukushima nuclear crisis in 2011, the CEO of Toyota, Akio Toyoda, was criticized at first for being slow to respond. But when he did, he didn't hide behind press releases. He visited the plant, talked with the workers, and gave face-to-face updates. That human presence helped rebuild trust. In crisis, a resilient leader needs emotional agility, cognitive reframing, connection and communication, and purpose-driven action. Yeah, resilient leaders need to tap into purpose greater than themselves. Purpose gives pain meaning. What is your why? When you're anchored in a larger mission, setbacks become detours, not dead ends. Remember Captain Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who safely landed the plane on the Hudson River? Y'all remember when that happened? In the interviews, he said he didn't act out of heroism, but out of purpose. And that purpose was a lifelong commitment to safety and excellence. And it was that mindset that allowed him to stay calm when others froze. So if you're a leader listening today, how can you build resilience before the next crisis hits? Hear here are some strategies, right? So the first strategy to utilize resilience when crisis hits is to build micro habits for recovery. Resilience is like a muscle. It's built through small, consistent recovery practices, whether it's journaling or breath work or walking without your phone, protected time to recalibrate, unplugging, and allowing yourself the space to refresh and revive when crisis hits. Leaders who wait for the weekend to rest will burn out. So you got to build recovery into your days. I tell everybody that I have ever coached that you cannot help others if you're not the best you. You need daily moments. It's not about how much time it is. It's about the quality of time, what you do with the time. Every leader needs to take a breath, needs to step back from the crisis of the day and be able to allow for recharge and rejuvenation. So I want you to consider, you got to build those moments, those micro habits for recovery, those set aside times during the day. But then along with, the micro habits for recovery, a leader who shows resilience during crisis also develops a red team. This is a group that plays devil's advocate. You got to surround yourself. Listen, you got to surround yourself with people who don't think like you. It's okay for people around the table to disagree with you about different matters. It's okay if they have a different outlook or perspective. It's those differences that strengthen the ability to manage different aspects of crisis in a organization, on a team. This is a group that pressure tests you intentionally or unintentionally with pressure test decisions and stress test systems and surface blind spots. And during the crisis, you'll need truth more than comfort. And I want every leader to hear this today. You cannot transform an organization if every decision, if every aspect of the culture, if every nook and cranny of the organization's infrastructure is built on you. You need people who challenge it. You need people who will give a different outlook. You need to surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth, but also people you can trust. And sometimes they're not always the same. But you want to develop a red team. Be intentional about having some people who, with every initiative, will test it by opposing it. That's their job, is to test it by opposing it. Now, the people who oppose it is because they oppose it. Well, that's a different story. But you want to have an intentional group of people who oppose every initiative so that it can go through the pressure test. A leader who's going to be resilient during crisis has to have that micro habits for recovery, develop the red team, but also practice pre-mortems. What is that? So before launching an initiative, ask your team, if this initiative fails 3 or 6 months down the road, what are we going to do? What went wrong? This proactive exercise, you need this. This helps build resilience by preparing your mind for contingency, which will reduce panic when the unexpected happens. You need a contingency plan. For the last 20 years or more, man, almost 30 years, wow, I have been in spaces of leadership and moments when leaders thought that their initiative was foolproof, that it had no holes, no flaws. They didn't really last the way that the leader was hoping. But having a contingency plan means you understand there are different variables, there are different circumstances that occur. And if the main initiative does not stick, if the major plan doesn't stick, you've got plan A, plan B, plan C, you're ready to adjust. And that's what resilience is, the ability not to fall back, but to lead forward, to be able to adopt when times are tough and still maintain the character of ethical, transformative leadership. That whole idea of practicing pre-mortems, it's an exercise that builds resilience by preparing your mind. So let's wrap up about this. Resilient leaders aren't unbreakable. Not me, not you. They're flexible. They bend without snapping. They stay grounded while adapting. They bring others with them through clarity, connection, and conviction. The truth is, for every leader, whether it's in a faith-based space or in a corporate space or an education space or a healthcare space or a professional sports space, you don't have to have everything figured out, but you do need to keep showing up. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you do need to keep showing up. Viktor Frankl once wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Resilience is found in that space. That's where leadership lives. I hope you gained a lot from our time together today. Thank you for listening to the Resilience Room podcast. If today's episode spoke to you in any way, please leave a review, share it with a colleague or a friend or a team who could use a dose of resilience today. Until the next time, this is the Resilience Room podcast. I am Orville, your host, and this is the place where strength is built, leaders rise, and breakthrough begins. Until next week, keep leading forward.
That's it for this episode of the Resilience Room, where leaders like you learn how to bend without breaking and turn transitions into triumphs. Like what you heard? Follow us on Instagram at OSB Coaching and on Facebook at OSB Coaching and Consulting. Want to go deeper? Visit osbcoachingandconsulting.com and let's talk about how you can build clarity, confidence, and a leadership legacy that lasts. Until next time, stay grounded, stay growing, and stay resilient.